with all of you, but my arm's too short, so will you help me out? Turn around, shake hands with somebody behind you, and say to them, God loves you, and so do I. Now turn to the person on the left-hand side and say, let's make it a great offering. What? I didn't hear it. When you applaud that, I'll sign you. Wow, that's great. We've had a lot of superstars, celebrities, and a lot of just common folks next door up here sharing with me in this happy service. But I can honestly say I've never had a human being that I'm more excited and happy to have than my friend Willard Scott. Willard Scott, God loves you, and so do I.
Thank you. Beautiful. I've never been here before. I watched the show on television, not every Sunday, but television doesn't really capture it. It is really magnificent.
Thank you.
Great edifice.
Thank you. You look different.
You mean my suit? Oh, you mean the...
Don't you wear a hairpiece?
Not in Southern California. It's a beautiful day, so I put my top down. Does that make sense? That is the best hairpiece I have ever seen in my life.
Well, I'll tell you, you can put a sombrero on it, move it back, and it wouldn't slide.
Well, unfortunately, I do.
That's good. And do you always wear a flower?
Yeah, somebody sent me a flower on television about 20 years ago to wear. And I can relate so much to your, building here because I love the garden and I love the flowers. And so every day I wear a flower in the air. Yeah.
That's great.
I've done that for long.
How did your career get started?
Well, I was a little kid in Alexandria, Virginia, and Eric Severide had just come back from overseas. This is about 1943, and he had been shot down in Burma and lost in the jungle and came back to the United States and was doing a show for CBS on radio. In those days, they didn't have television. And I was a kid in the building, and they let me watch the show, his radio show, 8 years old. And I said, that's what I want to do for a living. If I can ever do it, I want to be a radio announcer, hold my ear and say, this is the NBC Radio Network. And I finally hit the big time. I did Stella Dallas once. Anybody remember Stella Dallas in the audience? I thought I smelled some Bengay in this crowd. But ever since then, I wanted to do that. And you'll get a kick out of this, and I think some of our friends here, television watching at home will too. When I first got my job, I was the youngest page NBC ever hired. I was 15. And you had to have a work permit, otherwise you couldn't work. And they wanted somebody that could drive, and you had to be 18 to drive. So there was I applied for the job in Washington, D.C., and there was a little Episcopal church called the Church of the Epiphany on G Street. And I went over there, and I'd never been in an Episcopal church. I was raised a Baptist, see? So I went over there, and I went into the church by myself, and I got in front of the altar, and I made a little prayer, and I said, Dear Lord, I said, I love my job. I would like very much to be a page and work for NBC. And that was, say, 15 years old. And the next day, I got the telephone call, said, we're not quite sure why, but we just happen to like you, and we think you'll do all right. And I got my job, and I made $12 a week. I worked $6 on Saturday and $6 on Sunday, and I got my page job.
Fantastic. That's terrific. Now, weren't you also the original...
That's right. I was the first Ronald McDonald. I created the character for McDonald's Corporation, and I was also Bozo the Clown for about 4 years. But see, I did this in Washington, D.C., and I was 4 years Ronald McDonald the Clown and 4 years Bozo the Clown. But do you know how tough it is to be a clown in Washington? I mean...
Well, I don't know. I think they got... somebody would say they've got a lot of clowns in Washington.
They ran me out of business. The professionals. You can't fight the professionals. But I had a wonderful run. I guess as a kid, over the years, I've had a little... I love politicians. I said the Lord must have loved them too because he made so many of them. And politicians and weathermen are exactly alike. We both lie and get paid for it. So I've fooled around in politics all of my life in Washington. And I guess I've been in the White House with every administration since Franklin Roosevelt. And just, to be a little part of that's a lot of fun.
How did you ever start this business of congratulating people for being 100 years old?
Every good thing in my life has been a mistake. You know, I have planned things and submitted ideas and written things out and tried to make something formal out of it, and every time I fall on my face. Everything that I've ever, like the clown act, when I started that, it was everybody on the staff was too old to be a clown. They were all 45 or 50 years old. I was 23. I was the only one who could swing on the rope, you know, and had an operation of some kind. So the same thing with the older folks. Somebody just sent me a little announcement one day and said, my uncle's going to be 100 years old on such date. Would you announce it on the air? And I said, that's a cute idea. Now we get anywhere from 20 to 30 a day, and that's just on the Today Show. People who are centenarians. It's the fastest single growing group in America, and it's really exciting because I've met some of these people. I danced with a lady in Terre Haute, Indiana at the Grange Hall. She was 102 and a beautiful lady. The lady that played the piano had a J.C. Penney dress on, you know, and a little flowered hat, and she played the Banks of the Wabash. And this lady and I are dancing, and she says, how old do you think I am, or how old do I look? I said, you don't look a day over 80 to me. She said, most people say 70. And let me tell you, you folks will get a kick out of this. This is true, I swear to you this, and I wouldn't do that here if I didn't mean it. I got a letter from a man who wrote his, and I love that. Some of them write their own letters and say, please mention my birthday. And this fellow was 101 years old. And he said, please mention my birthday on television. He says, I'm 101 years old, and I still like the girls, but I've forgotten why.
Willard, what was your faith? What is it today? And share a bit about that.
Well, I love you so much, and we had a nice time to chat for a little bit. I find this kind of interesting in my life. When I was a clown, for instance, I found that everybody loves a clown, no matter who you are. If you're a Democrat or Republican, if you're Catholic or Protestant, or if you're Jewish, or no matter what you... And it dawned on me that one of the things about being a clown is that you have no labels. You have no preconceived ideas about what this person is or what he thinks about or what he's related to. And I found that on television, doing a little what I like to call sneaky lay ministry. I try to get the positive thoughts across. That's why we're, you know, birds of a feather. Right. I was raised basically in a Southern Baptist church, and our old preacher, I remember years ago, Dr. Campbell, I mentioned this to you down in the green room. The thing I loved about him the most was he radiated love. His sermons were good sometimes, and sometimes they were not the greatest. Nothing personal. But you could always count on him when anything happened in your life that you needed someone to care for you and someone died or someone got sick. He was always there. And I remember as a little child, I was 4 or 5 years old, after church, all the kids would come out of the church, and Dr. Campbell was 6'5" and a big man and wore a cutaway Prince Albert, the old style preaching outfit. He would sweep us up as little kids in his arms and hug us and love us. And I believe that kind of personal love and personal care and consideration and feeling made more influence on my life, not to mention my own mother and father, who just adored and loved and gave me everything that I could ever ask for. And in this sense, I'm a hypocrite, folks. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to pawn myself off as one of these, pious do-gooders. But I do believe the one thing we're all capable of, I don't care what our problems are, we can love each other. We can share each other's lives. We can make our world better by being positive. And that's what I try to do. That was a long answer for a short question.
Well, that's a great answer. That's a great answer. If you haven't enjoyed a good book lately, I want you to just give your bookstore a little jingle. There's a book out, The Joy of Living, Willard Scott, in paperback. I love it. Willard Scott, God loves you, so do I.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.